Welcome back. We had breaking news here on NBA Today. The Los Angeles Lakers have agreed to a 4-year contract with JJ Redick to make him the franchise's next coach, sources told ESPN. Redick, an ESPN NBA analyst who played 15 years in the league, met with Lakers VP and GM Rob Pelinka and owner Jeannie Buss over the weekend, and conversations on the vacancies continued throughout the week. All right, we got our whole panel here. Bobby Marks joining us. Bobby, your reaction to JJ Redick being the new head coach of the Lakers?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a fresh perspective here, but I think it's important, and I think Woj laid it out. He's got to hire the right staff. That's priority one. I lived through it in 2013. We had hired Jason Kidd right from playing. Jason put together a staff, and there was a major learning curve for the first 40 games here, and it eventually turned around. And I said it yesterday. What JJ Redick interviewed for with this Laker roster might be a little bit different than what we see in October here. So there's got to be that flexibility here as far as what he is going to be coaching here. But the staff is the most important thing right now.
Explain more about what you mean by the major learning curve. What were the obstacles that he kind of had to endure? Yeah,
it's more of the going from that player perspective to now a coach and having guys that you once played with, demanding the respect of the locker room, dealing with adversity during an 82-game season. This is not going to be, this is not Boston. Mm-hmm. This is not a 64-18 team right now. This was a team that lost in the first round. So there will be some adversity here along the way, and it's basically managing championship-level expectations with probably not a championship-level roster right now.
Well, I mean, I'm going to just bring this up. Not that I think LeBron is going anywhere, but he has a player option and could go someplace, and that could take into the summer. And all this talk about, LeBron and JJ in the podcast, and yada, yada. I agree with Dave. I don't think that was an audition for the job. I think I actually know how that came together. It was completely outside of any scope of him maybe trying to become the Lakers head coach. It was a long time coming for that podcast to be developed. But I think to me, it's like LeBron, first, number one, they got to make sure LeBron stays. Right? They got to make sure they know what they're doing with D'Angelo Russell, and if they don't keep D'Angelo Russell, they have to have a replacement there. I mean, this is a roster that is very much in flux, and we just heard from Rich Paul yesterday talking about, LeBron is not a package deal with Bronny, but that's a test to see if he is, right? I mean, there's teams out there in the league, and I know you've talked to him too, Bobby, in preparing for the draft, that have this idea. Maybe we should draft Bronny. Let's see if we draft him, and let's test whether that's a package deal or not. There are teams with the guts to do that, which is why Bronny hasn't worked out for more than just a handful of teams here. And all of those are still in play. So JJ just signed up, but what roster is he going to be coaching?
If I'm JJ, I call Joe Mazzulla, right? Joe Mazzulla just won an NBA championship at the age of 35. Joe Mazzulla did it his way, right, with a philosophy and a system that I didn't believe in, a lot of people didn't believe in, and he got it done. Now, you got to credit Brad Stevens for putting the right pieces around him so that his system could work surrounding Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But if I'm Rob Pelinka and I'm JJ Redick, I mimic or try to mimic what the Boston Celtics did, getting the right pieces, getting the system in place, and you move on from there. As far as adding assistants to the bench, I think it's critical. You look at what Joe Mazzulla had on his bench. One of those guys right now is the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets. Another one of those guys they brought in, I thought was a great move this offseason, and bringing in a guy in Sam Cassell who won the championship with the Boston Celtics as a player. I thought he played a huge role in that. Again, if I'm JJ, I'm reaching out to Joe Mazzulla. I'm figuring out some things. I'm learning some things. Again, I think he could make the adjustment. The game is a lot about X's and O's, but I wouldn't harp too much about that. It's about speaking the language in that locker room.
UD, you talked a little bit earlier about just JJ being able to earn the respect from these players. Bobby was talking about, going from being a player in the locker room to now trying to figure out how to communicate with these guys as the head coach. What do you think that JJ needs to prove to this locker room?
That he can take them there, that he can win. You know what I'm saying? That they can win. I think winning cures everything. I think we understand he has a great basketball mind. Let me say this about JJ. I think the timing of this right now, this is the right move. This is the best move to make. I think JJ is the best opportunity for the Lakers to get back on track. He has a great basketball mind. But what I will say is, if I was getting this job, people would have said the same thing about me because of my relationship with LeBron James. Is it going to be LeBron James' message or is it going to be Udonis Haslem's message? It's not hate on JJ. It's just being honest. So I'm sitting in this chair telling you what I know because I was in the locker rooms just as recently as a year ago. But yes, I do think JJ can get this job done. And guess what? The Lakers have been hearing all the talk about cynical locker room. They've been hearing all the talk about not being on the same page. So guess what they're going to do? Make sure they're on the same page. They're going to focus on not making the cynical locker room, making sure they have good energy in the locker room because they hear all us saying this right now. So with the timing of this, the draft coming up soon, I think this is the right time to make this move. And I think the Lakers hearing all the talk about it being a cynical locker room and all these different things, and they're going to make a really, really good effort to make sure that everybody's on board and everybody's on page. And once again, I'm going to go back to what Perk said. Rondo is going to be huge. If he can bring in Rondo, because not only does Rondo have the respect of Anthony Davis, he got the respect of LeBron James. LeBron James always talk about how great of a basketball mind that Rajon Rondo has. So that can be a guy that can not only connect your coaching staff, but can connect your locker room. Now, if you have a guy that can connect your locker room and that can speak the language and be an extension of your coach, now you're working with something.
And UD, I understand we're going to be talking about LeBron. We'll be talking about AD because they are the stars of this team. They both played 65-plus games last year, and the Lakers lost in 5 games in the first round. So it's going to be who they can get to be the UDs of this team next year. What's going to happen with D'Angelo Russell, as Ramona referenced? What can they do with, whether guys are going to opt in to the remaining years of their deal, LeBron James included, or what can they do with the 3 draft picks that they potentially can trade as of next Wednesday to go try to trade for something that's out there to make this roster better? To me, that's, JJ was a good hire, but there's so much more work to be done for this Lakers team to be able to contend.
Yeah, for sure. Pull the curtain back on the process of how the Lakers landed on JJ Redick as their head coach.
Christina, Rob Pelinka was in Chicago for the pre-draft combine in mid-May, and that's where he had his first kind of get-to-know-you conversation with JJ Redick. Not really an interview, but more sit-down, about 90 minutes, talking basketball, but not a formal interview. But that was the place where the conversation with UConn's Dan Hurley really started to gain traction. Rob Pelinka talked with Dan Hurley in Chicago back in mid-May, and that really set him, I think, even more aggressively on course to try and hire Dan Hurley. It took a few weeks before they could get Hurley to come out, visit, where he was taking the potential offer even more seriously. Ultimately, he turned that job down. I guess it was early last week. And then the Lakers went back to JJ Redick, who Pelinka had been intrigued with from the start. He had been certainly somebody he identified with that he thought, like a lot of other people in the league, executives, owners, thought had a chance to be a high-level NBA head coach. But they had a chance in Chicago to spend time with both, obviously coming off the back-to-back national championships, the level that Dan Hurley's teams were performing at, certainly made him extremely attractive. And his interest in listening to the Lakers grew as time went on until he made that trip to L.A. But JJ Redick was going to be a head coach in this league. It wasn't going to take much longer. The Lakers knew that. And I think Rob Pelinka's and Jeannie Buss have, great belief in his ability to not just coach this group of veteran stars they have, but to be the coach who can put in a developmental program, who can put together a teaching staff for the young players on the roster, and then the players they're going to have to draft and develop. That's more important than ever with the new salary cap in the NBA, is drafting well, developing your young players. It is harder to do it with big trades for trading out draft picks and free agency. You've got to build out your own infrastructure. That was the Lakers' goal in their pursuit of Dan Hurley, and that's their goal now with the hiring of JJ Redick.
Okay, so about 10 seconds before you broke the news about the Lakers hiring JJ Redick, Dave had just mentioned that you had reported that they had also brought in some other candidates. So ultimately, why did LA decide to hire JJ out of those other candidates that they were considering?
They saw upside with JJ Redick, and there was not necessarily a championship coach ready-made to step in. The market, it's thin right now of really accomplished head coaches who are maybe in the prime of their career. A lot of them have taken other jobs. It's a marketplace of really good assistant coaches. You know, some assistants who've had good head coaching experience and had success, like Kenny Atkinson, like James Borrego, who've gone back to being associate head coaches. And so I think what the Lakers saw was upside in JJ Redick and an ability with the right coaching staff to become a high-level NBA coach. And so that's ultimately what had them interested in him in the beginning and then brought him back here near the end post-Hurley.
And this is a big picture view of JJ to me is, look at JJ Redick as a player, all right? Bobby, you probably evaluated him in the draft at one point. I mean, he's not the best athlete. He's a really good shooter, but he just thinks the game in a different way. And he also got to a place, and I think he's credited Stan Van Gundy in Orlando with helping him get to this place of understanding defense enough to where he could be out on the floor in those spots. He had a long NBA career for somebody with his makeup, right? You wouldn't have predicted him to have as long a career as he did, but people always wanted him on their teams. Every team he left, he had a good relationship with the star player. Joel Embiid and him are still close from his days in Philly. He went to Dallas. I mean, Chris Paul, right? I mean, everywhere he's gone, he has built relationships and friendships with a lot of players on the team, not just the stars, but all throughout that locker room. And I think that makes for a good coach. That usually translates into whatever locker room you do. But it reminds me a lot of Steve Kerr in that profile. And I remember being asked point blank on 10 years ago, however long that was, why is Steve Kerr such a great candidate? Why do the Knicks want him? Why do the Warriors want him? He almost took that Knicks job. There's still a contract out there that he could have signed. But he decides to go for the Warriors because he knew what kind of team that was. And so is this JJ taking the Knicks job right now? Or is this JJ taking the Warriors job? We'll see what kind of talent the Lakers can give him because he is a great prospect as a head coach.
Yeah, things just getting started there in LA. Woj, thank you.
NBA